everybody, I'm Jingjing Lin, and today I'm going to present to you about the topic, what it means to do a PhD. So I just recently graduated as a doctor student and having got the degree of doctor in communication and communication sciences. So for 3 years, I was working in the topic of massive open online courses in a Swiss public university in the south, in the city of Lugano, Università della Svizzera Italiana. So I spent my 3 years there, starting from January 2015. So not right away as a researcher, but right away as a project manager to help develop and launch the first e-tourism MOOC at UC. So now let's move on to my understanding of being a PhD student and what you can do, what you can have during this experience. And after that, I'm going to share with you some part of my research so you can have more understanding about how eventually the research that has been achieved by PhD students can look like. So I'm now going to share with you my slides here on the screen. So what it means to do a PhD. So from my understanding that as a PhD student, you may hold a lot of different roles. So this whole process that you follow an expert in the field to dig very deep into a certain very narrow topic, and you are trained to become an independent researcher, you should be able to hold some teaching experience and be able to teach in class when you graduate. And you should also have the experience and highly involved in a project or several projects sometimes. And also you take classes from the campus so that you usually study in small group with other PhD students, sometimes mixed with master students, to learn from different teachers. So all this very long process of trainings are usually supervised by a professor who is your supervisor, and all your aim going through this whole journey is to become a professor in academic world one day. So if I quote from the Wikipedia about the definition of apprenticeship, you can see more similarity between these two concepts. An apprenticeship is a system of training a new generation of practitioners of a trade or profession with on-the-job training, and often some accompanying study, classroom work or reading. Apprenticeship also enables practitioners to gain a license to practice in a regulated profession. Most of their training is done while working for an employer who helps the apprentices learn their trade or profession in exchange for their continued labor for an agreed period after they have achieved measurable competencies. Apprenticeships typically last 3 to 7 years. People who successfully complete an apprenticeship reach the journeyman or professional certification level of competence. Yeah, it's a very long concept, but as you can see, there are so many shared comments between these two concepts. So I think it is very proper to use apprentice as a concept to understand the PhD student. So we already know that the goal of this certain trainings for a PhD student is to become a professor, but that's not always the case, right? Because your goals when you enter this experience may be to become a professor, but after 3 years, you think, maybe this one doesn't suit me that well, I will try other profession instead. But this whole process, let's say, to start, is to aim for becoming a professor one day. So before doing a PhD, you have to think. You cannot just jump into 3 to 6 years, your lifetime commitment, without much thinking, right? So the first question you probably needed to ask yourself is, what do I plan to do after finishing it? Well, there are so many life paths you can take. You can become a writer, you can become a magician, you can become a computer scientist, but why doing research for 3 to 7 years to actually become such a profession? Why doing a PhD for that? So, as I said before, the major goal of having a PhD study is to one day become a professor. Is that your life plan? To work in the university setting, to do research all the time, to get project fundings from the scientific committee of your nation, and work with a group of people to do international research, to teach students in the class, usually in the university setting. So all these different kind of job tasks that you have to think about it, is that what you like to do? Is that what you want to do one day? The second question is, what topic do I want to spend 3 to 6 years lifetime on? You see, this is very important. If you hate, let's say, doing experiment in the lab, you just don't like it, your arm complains to you all the time, then probably you need a very, very strong motivation to help yourself stay in the lab. So finding a topic, finding a motivation, finding a subject that you truly love is very important to help you go through sometimes a very painful experience during the PhD period. So what topic that you want to learn more, want to practice more, and want to contribute to the human society, as a researcher, as a scientist or social scientist. The third question is, do you enjoy doing research as a profession? Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because unless you are very committed or involved in a research process, you probably don't know if you love it or not. So usually in the undergraduate study period, or sometimes even master programs, they don't give you such opportunity to write very intensely as a researcher. So instead, the PhD period, actually a very big percentage of the time is related to doing research by yourself. So that's a very intense opportunity for you to do research. So after these 3 years, you are going to understand more what is doing research, how to do it, and what can research bring on, things like that. But before jumping into such experience, you probably, if you are considering doing a research as a PhD student, you probably, in your undergraduate time or in your master program time, you need to find more opportunities to practice doing very intensive research project, or write your thesis very dedicatedly, not just to graduate, but to see if you truly love writing a thesis, writing research paper, doing research work. So this will help you to decide to take a PhD opportunity or not. So when doing a PhD, you usually learn things and practice and repeat the process until you master them. And there are different things that you should pay attention to. So during this period, you are going to encounter different tools. Let's say reference tools, let's say some citation tools, some writing aid tools. And for science students, probably different physical tools to help you do the experiments. So all this, or different machines to help you finish your study. So all this kind of tools, software, hardware, they are very important to help you more efficiently achieve your research output. So you have to learn them, master them, and understand how they work. So the second one is the knowledge. What has been done in this field, in this topic, what is the gap, and what is the interesting thing that most gain your attention. So all this knowledge, you can learn them through attending workshop, classes, conference, reading books, reading literature in academic publications. So through 3 to 6 years study, very intensive study, you will get a very, very deep knowledge about certain topic. But some people say it's very important to be expert in certain field, and that's what PhD student is aiming for. So, but also some people criticize that it's too narrow. You know, only PhD students only know about their own topic, not anybody else. And so when you are in different kind of collaborations or communications in your community of certain knowledge, you should talk more. But at the same time, you should also reach out to other communities and to see if there's any possibility to do cross-discipline research together. And the third one is the ethics. Probably not every student got education in this one. So plagiarism, co-authorship, all this kind of different aspects of the ethics, you have to think about it. And of course, sometimes you may feel in conflict with some professors, but then you needed to communicate with them more about this, because practice ethics as researchers is also very important during this process. If you are wrong from this period, you are going to be wrong, possibly in the long run. But if you set up a very clear, very straight ethics from the beginning, and you are going to have less trouble later. So then you also needed to practice your attitude as a scientist. So very serious, very strict. There's no ambiguous part. You have to be very precise, and you have to make it valid, to be possible to be validated by your peers. So also you develop certain skills like writing skill, presentation skill during this process, and they are very important in the long run as for you to be an independent researcher, to be an efficient and successful researcher, to be more precise. So after doing a PhD, you usually need to think and decide. So what have you learned in the last 3 years or 6 years? You have to reflect on your experience and think about what kind of expert you are now, and what can you do to benefit the society with what you have now. So that is connected with the second question, how to apply what you learn. So even though the PhD program is helping you to become a professor, but that's not usually that's not always the case. A lot of PhD students, after they graduate, they go to the industry and become a researcher in a lab or become a researcher in a company to continue their research journey in the corporation, in the industry setting. So the third question is more enough. So have finished all these things, all this experience. Are you fed up with it, or you are actually hungry for more? So that's a decision after a PhD study that you needed to make. So now I'm going to talk about my thesis, which is about massive open online courses. And I tried to explore the experiences of instructors teaching massive open online courses in tourism and hospitality. I used a mixed methods approach, mostly qualitative study because of the topics property. So I have to now first go to the literature review. So usually the first thing you ask yourself as a PhD student is, what can I do for this scientific community? What kind of gap is there in the literature that my little research can fit in? And people can come and say, hey, you did a good job to contribute to this community. So I have two things on my mind. One is, what is the gap in MOOC studies? Another one is, what is the gap in tourism and hospitality MOOC studies? Because my thesis is very closely related to the e-tourism MOOC project. So I chose the discipline of tourism as a context in my thesis. So the first thing I did is I followed the literature review, systematic literature review that was proposed by these authors that you can see from screen, Zancanaro and De Souza, Dominique. Their approach has helped me to select 519 journal articles, which were published between 2008 and 2017. And after this, I found out that there were 14 systematic review articles among this whole group of journal articles. These systematic review articles, they were quite dedicated to understand what has been done in this field, what has been discussed among scholars about this topic. And then they proposed, among them, they proposed a lot of things, but there are two things that got my attention. One is the lack of studies about instructors and providers. Another one is the lack of a qualitative research approach. So with this on my mind, I found that among these 14 systematic review articles, there's a gap that was not studied yet. So that is between 2015 and 2017. There was no systematic review research yet. So with this on my mind, I continue to retrieve 337 journal articles from the previously collected 519 journal articles. So these 337 journal articles, they were published between 2015 and 2017. So by reading them further, 9 themes of topics emerged from them. So among these 9 themes, I found that 34% learners, they are learners focused. So they study from the perspectives of learners who are mainly dedicated to study about learners as a group. And on the other hand, instructors focused research that only took up for about 11%. So in another word, that is that kind of confirmed the lack of studies about instructors and providers. After I did a literature review of the MOOC publications, and I found out that the gap that were identified by 14 systematic review articles, there are still a gap in the literature. So that actually made me feel very confident to continue this study, to understand, to explore instructors and providers' perspectives from a qualitative research approach. So that is the gap that I identified in the MOOC studies. And the second one is what is the gap in tourism and hospitality MOOC studies. So there's very little study about tourism and hospitality MOOC studies. I only found 12 publications by the time I was collecting them. So among these 12 publications, they were categorized if for those 9 things I identified in MOOC studies. You can see that 6 their commentary and concepts. That means it didn't involve any empirical studies, only their subjective views of MOOCs and in tourism and hospitalities in general. And 2 publications, they were case reports or evaluations. So the instructors, they did MOOCs themselves in tourism or hospitality topics, and they report their experience as an instructor or a project manager, or they evaluate their MOOC performance at the end and report it to the scientific community. Or there are 2 about pedagogy, curriculum, and design, and 1 about learner focus, and only 1 was about instructor focused. So with this gap identified, that I also confirmed that it's very important to do a research that can help to address these 2 gaps together. So that is how I decided to do MOOC research to explore the experiences and the perspective of instructors using qualitative methods approach, and as much as possible to report an empirical study based on the project I was engaged in. So 3 research questions were proposed after the research aim was identified. So first one is, what are the development statuses, commonalities, and differences among the offerings of tourism and hospitality MOOCs? The second one is, how did pioneer instructors implement MOOC innovation in tourism and hospitality? The third one is, how did a MOOC provider implement a MOOC in the case of the e-tourism communication perspectives MOOC? These 3 research questions, they were constructed by 6 independent studies following different research approaches, and that mainly use case studies. So the first 2 research questions, one is about design of the MOOC. Second one is about instructors. These 2 research questions, they were done with multiple case studies. The first one was with qualitative. The first 2 were qualitative research approach, and the third research question, it was a mixed, so both qualitative and quantitative research. A total of 6 studies, they helped to answer these 3 research questions. The first 2, they addressed the aspect of design and instructors. The final 4 studies, they addressed the process of implementation, technology aspect, learners, and evaluation aspects. And they were all based in the single case of UC e-tourism MOOC. So the theoretical contribution of these 6 studies together is, usually I proposed a framework. So that can be verified by other studies later. So for example, in the research question 1, I proposed a framework to review MOOCs. So different kind of course elements. I come up with this framework by reviewing 18 MOOCs in tourism and hospitalities. And of course, it is limited to the topic of tourism and hospitality. It may have some generalization problem, because you may say in the topic of the science or in the topic of philosophy, it may not work. But I can only draw a conclusion based on the cases, 18 cases of tourism and hospitality MOOCs. So this framework helps future researchers and practitioners to design and develop their own MOOCs, let's say. So the research question 2, it led to an implementation process of producing MOOCs. So I interviewed 6 instructors who did tourism and hospitality MOOCs as pioneers. And through the conversation with them, I understood that they actually went through some similar phases of productions. So I summarized them and presented as a framework for future researchers and practitioners to understand better what's their experience of those pioneer instructors and what can they do in the future to improve such process or such experience. And in the third research question, I apply what I got from the second research question, the implementation process, and to explain how UC, as a Swiss public university, how it went through to implement its first e-tourism topic MOOC. And in the fourth study, I actually reviewed different 17 MOOC platforms and compare them with the different functions and aspects of functions so that people can understand how to compare MOOC platforms and can understand different functionalities that are available on different MOOC platforms. This can be very helpful for project managers of MOOC design development, because in some cases you need to select a host MOOC platform first before you go for instructional design or video production. And in the fifth study, we launched actually an online engagement learner survey in the MOOC, in the 8-week MOOC that we launched at UC. And that engagement survey was actually very helpful to identify different aspects of engagement that MOOC learners had when they were interacting with our content, with our instructors and assistants when the MOOC was online. And this can be in particular helpful when you don't have very strong analytic tools that is available on the MOOC platform. So it can actually help you to identify what learners are satisfied about, what they are engaging with, this kind of aspects. And it can help you to evaluate how much your MOOC is engaging from the perspective of MOOC learners. And in the final study, I, for the first time, tried to utilize Kirkpatrick Model to help evaluate MOOC as a project, its performance, so how it actually can be evaluated following the Kirkpatrick model. So it actually involved different sources of data, including surveys, interviews, learning analytics available on the platform, also participant observation, which is me as a project manager, and how I perceive how the whole project evolved through the different periods. And as you can see that I utilize a lot of qualitative approach instead of quantitative approach. That can lead to some limitation in doing research, but can also reveal very interesting results, sometimes even more appealing than quantitative research results, because especially when you don't have a clue what it is inside, or it is the phenomena is in very initial phase of development. Using qualitative research approach can help you reveal very detailed reports of the stories, experiences, and phenomenon details. From this table, you may see that the whole process is quite organized and very clear, but when you are doing a PhD, it's not like this. Okay, when you're presenting finally as a PhD graduate, you see the whole picture. But when you are deep inside the process, it's not like this. So if I go back here, so actually I didn't start from the research question 1 and go through the whole process as a linear process till the research question 3.4. I started actually from research question 3.2. So first task I got as a project manager to do the MOOC for UC was to compare different MOOC platforms and select one platform for them. So this actually became the first research output I had, which was presented in an international conference in Canada. And then you went through the whole process of the MOOC implementation. So you launched the learner engagement survey, you evaluate the whole program after it is finished, and then you look back thinking, oh, maybe there are other things that I was missing. So besides we were doing MOOC in tourism field, what about other people? So to align with this process, I also did kind of like a benchmarking study to understand what other people were doing with tourism and hospitality topics using the format of MOOC as education delivery format. So that actually resulted seeing the research outputs that you can see from research question 1 and research question 2. So as you can see that the whole PhD study process for me was never linear. So I didn't have a complete clear idea from the beginning, and which may be the case for some PhD students as well. But don't panic, because over different periods, you are going to mature as a researcher, and as your knowledge accumulates and your skill accumulates, you are going to have a better view of what you needed to do, what you need to contribute. It is also very frequent that you probably needed to change the direction of your research. And don't panic at that crossroads as well, because that's also very, let's say, that's not rare cases in the among the PhD students. But always bear in your mind that this whole process of research as a PhD student is your way of looking at the world, your way of conducting scientific inquiry, your way of approaching and contributing to the knowledge bodies of the human society. So take it your way and talk to your professors, talk to different students, talk to different committee members of your community, so that you can benefit from different experiences, different perspectives, and that, I assure you, can help you very much to shape your research direction, shape your research framework. Very, very beneficial. So my doctoral dissertation now is free online for your access if you scan the code here on the screen, or you can directly visit the link I'm going to post later under the video. You can read the whole doctoral dissertation from me for free there. And if you have any questions, you are welcome to contact me. We can have some discussion if you encounter some problems, some doubts as a PhD student or as a researcher student in the master level or in the undergraduate level. You are welcome to contact me so I can share with you more about how to be an independent researcher. I would love to help if mutual discussion can benefit you or make you feel more clear about your doubts. So thank you very much for coming to this webinar. No matter what, I'm very happy that the PhD journey for me was quite fruitful and meaningful, as well as a life journey. And if you already have very positive answer to all your doubts to become a PhD student or not, if you have already very positive answers to this, go ahead for it. And it's a very, very promising journey, very promising as a person's growth as well. So good luck to your life, to your work, and I will see you next time in other webinars that is provided by AHA Education. So another thing that I want to mention before I close this webinar is that after I graduate as a PhD student, I decided to have to move to another phase of my life, to actually start a startup in Switzerland. And the name is AHA Education. You can go to our website, aha.education, to visit our different products there. So this is another case that, instead of aiming for becoming a professor after finishing a PhD, I actually shift to become an entrepreneur in the education field. I still bring along all my knowledge and skills that I got from my PhD training, and that was very valuable. So talk to your teacher, talk to your peer, and if you like, talk to me. And I hope all of you will enjoy your life, and no matter where you are in this world. Thank you very much.